He turned water into wine, I turned whiskey into songs. Too many second chances, too many too far gones. Gave me grace along the way, took my heart and led me home. Don't you see, it's a God thing for me. Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee.
Welcome to the Heartland Journal podcast with Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of heartlandjournal.com.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome back. I'm Steve Abramowitz, and this is the Heartland Journal podcast. You found us. On this show, we are focusing on our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community and lovers of truth. Today, we are talking with very special guest, Brandon Lewis. Longtime listeners of this show know him as BL. Brandon Lewis is the founder, owner, editor, and operator of Tennessee's only conservative news outlet, TennesseeConservativeNews.com. It's right there in the name. TTC is Tennessee's largest conservative news alternative, focused entirely on the volunteer state. You won't find national news there. I know this because when I was just a new newspaper owner, boiling like a frog in Seattle, taking on the Seattle Times, I found TTC online and got to read about a place a lot less crazy during COVID fascism, transing kids in school, porn in the kindergarten, sex ed curriculum written by Planned Parenthood, and beta blockers for 9-year-olds in Summer Swim League. Brandon was reporting on conservative stuff, so I moved here, pretty much because of his reporting. Welcome to America, and don't California my Tennessee. The funny thing is, he was the only one. The largest papers were just like the Seattle Times, bought out and woke. TTC is 100% grassroots donor supported. They have not elected tax exempt status in order to prevent government regulation of their editorial content. You can tell the difference in the reading. TTC was founded in 2020 in Chattanooga, where we both go on with Yaffe live weekly on the radio. The grassroots donations he gets goes 100% toward the operation and maintenance of TTC, with the founder BL not taking a cut for himself. Sounds familiar? I don't either. TTC has grown to be the state's largest conservative news alternative with a strong website, newsletter, and social media following. If you're interested, please go there and subscribe. Let's talk Tennessee. It's been too long. Hello, my friend. How are you today?
I'm fantastic, Steve. Glad to be here.
You up above the smoke and the clouds up there in Signal Mountain still?
Well, we're above the smog, but we're in the clouds most of the time. We have rain and fog and rain here lately with all the precipitation, but it's part of living in the mountains.
Do you just lord over eastern Tennessee into Georgia like Zeus on Mount Olympus up there? What's it like?
Well, I don't know. I can't really see anything but the bowl of trees I'm in, so I don't get to lord over much. I can look at nature, and that makes me happy.
That's right. Well, when they bury you, you can look up into those trees for the rest of eternity, I guess.
That's my plan, right in the backyard. Why not?
Signal Mountain. That'll be you and the Civil War veterans or memorials, I should say.
Yes.
I looked it up. You've been on my show 17 times. Today
Wow.
is episode 457, not 357, but 457. So that's 4% of Tennessee shows for you liberals out there listening that can't do math. No one else comes close. By way of comparison, Tennessee imposes a 4% sales tax on groceries. There's my segue. Only 13 states do this. Hawaii, 4%, which makes sense. Everything has to be imported. Idaho used to be a red state. They do it. I don't know why. Probably shouldn't. Our neighbors, Mississippi, 7%, which is shocking. My neighbor, not yours. Do you think Tennessee should get rid of its especially since we have all this government-created inflation?
Well, I think, Monty Fritz brought it to everyone's attention that the revenue collections in Tennessee are already, to my knowledge, as of today, have surpassed collections and the goals. And so, given the fact that we have rampant inflation that was caused by primarily everyone who got involved in the terrible legislation during COVID and the many executive actions that put our world and national economy into a downward spiral, I think that the government should certainly give people in Tennessee a reprieve on their taxes, wherever it comes from. And on the, issue of taxes, one thing that was supposed to be a hallmark piece of legislation, and they even made noise about it early on in the session as if they were going to do something about it, is the exorbitant and ever increasing property taxes by these county and municipal governments that are out of control. I know Williamson County has experienced a lot of that. And it's a shell game, whether they do it through valuation or rate increases. We need something that allows the state and local governments to live within their means, just like Tennessee taxpayers have to do.
Yeah, I think the assessors are to blame for that. And I'd like to take a little bit of credit for that, bringing that from my state of California, saying, hey, Tennessee is one of 4 states that don't have a property tax cap. Let's knock that off. So I worked with Art Laffer, and we actually got that ball to move a little bit. And Jason Zachary over there in Eastern Tennessee actually had a bill before the legislature last session, but didn't work because the committees are a mess. We'll talk about that. And wacky chick Assemblywoman Afton Bain is actually the one who started that movement for the repeal of the grocery tax cap. She's a Democrat. Do you think it should be a Republican red state issue?
It would be better if they took the lead on it. So often on issues like corporate welfare, government transparency, and a variety of other things, the Democrats seem to be more engaged and willing to move on that topic. And it's odd because that honestly makes them on that specific issue more in alignment with GOP primary voters than the actual leadership of the GOP in Tennessee. So I've never been one of these people that will shut down a conversation across the aisle. I believe we should be having those conversations. We don't even have conversations that are meaningful often in the Tennessee legislature because of the fear that Cameron Sexton, Randy McNally, and others pushed down on their caucuses, removing people from committees, killing their legislation, etc. So I would love to see a more spirited conversation that wasn't so partisan or so establishment focused. So by all means, I don't care where the good ideas come from, Steve. If they're good ideas, people should be open to listening to them.
I say the same thing about big tech and data centers. The GOP should get behind it because Dems will run with it if they don't. The stopping of them, obviously, already are some places, even Memphis.
Yeah, absolutely. It's embarrassing to watch Democrats take the lead on things. But one thing I have discovered over the years, whether it's property tax hikes, getting rid of voice votes, illegal immigration reform, often with the legislature, you have to be patient. It's unfortunate. I mean, they should be able to read the will of the electorate and represent them up in Nashville, but so often it takes several sessions in a row to get movement on key issues, and until they get tired of getting beat up with their record, like closing the primaries and other things, they tend to just kind of slow walk these issues.
Yeah, and we only have a session that goes from January to April, so they really got to pack it all in a short amount of time, unlike Texas, which is once every 2 years, so it could be worse. But yeah, other than emergency sessions, of which there's been in Governor Lee's now 8 years, 4, I think, one every other year of an emergency session, something like that. And
I don't know that he hasn't had more. Let's count them. We had the remove the gun rights of Tennesseans because transgender people shoot up the Covenant School. We had give woke Ford Motor Company $2 billion to build a bunch of stuff that they've not built at all already with electric vehicles, which are losing $2 billion a year. We had 2 COVID special sessions, which he was dragged kicking and screaming to basically undo all the executive orders that he did. You had the redistricting session that gets us up to 5. I know we've had at least 5. I may be missing one, but to my knowledge, I think Governor Lee has called more special sessions, or at least participated in more than any other governor in Tennessee history. And that probably includes whoever was in charge during the Civil War. And so it's amazing that the guy just can't get things done in regular business. And when he does call the legislature together from him, it's corporate welfare. It's taking away people's rights. He's never called a good special session. Oh, and I think there's another one for vouchers.
That was inside the same session. So it was like a super session inside a session.
Yeah. So, but at any rate, he's very, if he's got a pet project, whether the electorate wants it or not, he's perfectly willing to call the legislature back into session.
Yeah. Just like shall not infringe, they don't get the definition of emergency. They just, like I
Yeah.
said, they did it inside a session. It's like a Starbucks inside a Starbucks. There's so many reasons to have a session. Might as well just do it when you can. Anyway, it's crazy. Well, we'll get into that more too. So Tennessee, yours and my Tennessee, is third in America in farms. There's about 63,000 of them. Kentucky and Minnesota, that poor, poor abused Minnesota, are ahead of us. Do you think the gentlemen and ladies in the assembly in Nashville take care of those farmers, those 360,000 people employed in ag?
It seems to me they take care of big ag pretty well. I mean, I've seen that happen with the Farm Bureau is likely one of the, if not the largest lobby right now behind big medical. And so they take care of big, any of the farmers that can hire lobbyists, make donations, things of that nature. But meanwhile, you see, I mean, it's taken so much work to get us back to our roots, which is, one reason this thing I'm wearing here from Michelle Renault, make Tennessee healthy again, being able to get raw milk, being able to buy your food directly from a farmer without government interference and without it being pasteurized and vaccinated and covered in poison and everything else, and or granting, these big ag, pharmaceutical companies, almost, if it weren't for the backlash, complete immunity for any of the damage that their pesticides or weed killers cause. And so, we had some marginal movement, I think, last session, getting food dye out of foods and things of that nature. But the fluoridation bill, and I think also the chlorinization bill, I don't know if that one passed or not. I can't recall. But, people don't want it, but there's enough of a lobby, whoever's selling the bulk fluoride to all of these water distributors to get involved. So I think the legislature has done a very good job of protecting big ag and the interests that fund the Farm Bureau and keep that machine going. But
Mhm.
your average family farmer, they've not really done as much. However, I do appreciate the Chinese farmland bill being passed to try to eliminate some of the acquisition of farmland. But I think there's a lot we can do to really reconnect the farmer with the consumer and get the government and big ag out of the middle of it.
Yeah, I had a little big hand in the fluoride bill with your gal, Michelle Renault, as a matter of fact. And so I'm glad that I brought that one to the state too. And they didn't go for it. One guy decided he was late in traffic and couldn't get it out of committee. So I guess we'll have to deal with it again next year. And I'm blessed to be just an hour away from the Amish country of Tennessee, and so you can get a lot of that. But the stuff that falls down on everybody. So even that, good natural stuff is contaminated. So we really do need
Well,
to
and it
clean
was
that up.
it was interesting, Steve. You recall that story that we broke where they caught the lobbyists on a Zoom call, basically saying, "We've got a couple of weak rhinos. Here's how we're going to maneuver this. We're going to send it to another committee and kill this fluoridation bill." And they even said, Michelle Renault's got the messaging. The people are behind her. The constituents are behind her. Here's how we thwart the will of the constituents with the help of a rhino legislator. I mean, it's just terrible to see this. People claim that they're going up to Nashville to represent their constituents when instead they very often just represent the special interest.
Yeah, I think you're the one that coined the phrase. Like the first term, the first 2 years they're up there, they listen to their constituents. They're pretty good. The second year, maybe about 50-50. By the third year, they're totally bought and sold. They don't listen to anybody but themselves and maybe their spouses. I did a show with the new Ag Commissioner Holt. Do you think he and the last guy, Dr. Charlie Hatcher, did a good job for farmers and rivers with all this talk of dumps along rivers and spraying from above and data centers and TVA looking for land to develop?
I'm not really sure. I can't comment. If I don't know something, I don't try to flub my way through it. So as to the commissioner's, performance, I don't really know what that role entails and how good of a job the gentleman is doing. But typically, people that are in the administration in Tennessee are appointed by the administration most of the time. And so as a result, we
Those
tend to
two,
get,
those two certainly were. Yeah.
yeah, we tend to get a lot of yes men, people that are right in alignment with big corporate type initiatives from Bill Lee. Scrimetti, on the other hand, I've been very happy with him. almost exclusively. There were a couple of things I might have disagreed with, but he's been very aggressive, very assertive in defending Tennessee and taking and winning and being successful with lawsuits that represent more conservative views. So in that regard, we definitely traded up on our AG since I've been running the Tennessee Conservative. Some of the other, some of those I kind of keep up with, but the ag commissioner wouldn't be one of them.
The AG is interesting because it's not appointed by the governor. Supreme Court appoints that role. So it's actually a dichotomy unless they get on the same page, which ultimately I think they did. It depends on his motivations for next too. Maybe he wants to be governor one day. I don't know. Skrmetti has been on the show, but we didn't talk about that. He was new at the time, came out of Memphis, helping defeat child trafficking. So a hero and now a politician. So what are you going to do? I always like to bring it up because as a political scientist, amateur, and curious by nature, 360,000 jobs versus the next biggest employer, FedEx, which is only 30,000 in Memphis, and Vandy Medical is about 50,000. So combined, the two biggest, only about a quarter of what the farmers are for electoral politics, right? Yet we're known as business-friendly state anywhere else. All 49 other states think of Tennessee as business-friendly. We got the NFL, we got Ford, we got all the things you listed. Do you think Bill Lee was too friendly to corporations instead of the farmers so that the Republican Party now has to live with it going forward as like a legacy of that ain't MAGA? Even Trump called him a rhino.
I don't know that he's any worse than the rank and file leadership in the House. I mean, we've been doling out corporate welfare, even though it's wildly unpopular, for as long as I've been keeping up with Tennessee politics. And it in some extent, I can kind of forgive maybe the largest corporations that do specialized things that no one else can do. Big, huge manufacturers and things that require infrastructure, things of that nature. But Whataburger, do we really need to give Whataburger and Starbucks
In and out, you mean?
In-N-Out, sorry, and other chain stores millions and millions of dollars to compete with mom and pops that basically the mom and pops have to pay the taxes that fund their competition.
No, people are pissed that Starbucks is getting 30 million bucks. I mean, they charge
They should be.
hot water at 90% margins. Why do they need it?
Yeah, if you're running a small coffee shop, if you're running a food service business of any sort, I mean, I would look at Governor Lee and be like, I can't believe you're taking my taxpayer money to fund my competition. I mean, there's nothing conservative about that. That is all corporatism. That's all corporate welfare. That's something that you would, I would say you'd see Democrats do it, but most of the Democrat caucus is against it. GOP primary voters are against it, but our leadership is for it. And so that's one of the big issues that you see where there's misalignment. I would say the thing that allows that to continue to go on, other than the lack of principles of our leadership, is the fact that it's not it's hard to get people wound up about it. Illegal immigration, education, there's a few things that people pay attention to, and it's kind of a visceral issue. Corporate welfare is one of those wonky topics that very few people understand, and it seems even fewer care about. Yeah. At least that's been my assessment.
Well, we all pay, even me, this little show, I have to pay that $600 a year fee just to have the corporation in town. That's like 5 Starbucks lattes. So they should give us a rebate in some kind if they're going to hand up that money, that revenue over to Starbucks to, like I said, give us $10 coffee with 90% margins, which is really just hot water and a few beans sprinkled in there. Okay. So I've had 2 of the 3 of these people on multiple times, and the third one keeps saying he'll come on. So what are your thoughts on the 3 possible replacements for Lee? Rose, Blackburn, who's leading the polls, and Monty Fritz.
So I think it's plain to see anybody that's watching that obviously Monty Fritz has the most conservative record. I love his outspoken nature. He's working the grassroots harder than any other candidate. However, it's a statewide campaign, and having either ran or been a staff member of, I think 14 now, this upcoming one, hopefully that I'm a little dinky race I'm working on will be 15, and I've won 15 races. And having been a campaign consultant, I don't look at campaigns through the eyes of your typical grassroots individual, just most people tend to be very personality driven. And it's like, who do I identify with? Who's saying what I want to hear? I tend to look at it like, okay, you've got to reach millions and millions of people. Your average Tennessean can't name their state representative and state rep if you poll them. Even the ones that vote, like, get foggy on it. If you ask them one thing that happened in the legislature last year, except for the folks that watch your show and keep up with our publication, they can't tell you even a thing. And so they're pretty low information, but they feel obligated civically to go vote. Well, if you're sitting, in the hills and the hollers or even in suburbia, and if you don't get pounded with mail, text messages, phone calls, door knockers, social media ads, broadcasts, you don't even know somebody's running. And that's how little information most people take with them to the polls.
Well, that's why they were able to take advantage of the flyers, right? They abused the flyers last go round because they were so easy to manipulate.
Yes. And so running, the bigger the race gets, the more money is non-negotiable. And so with Blackburn already having as much name ID as she has, and with her war chest being as full as it is, I'm pretty sure that she will be our next governor. I hate to say that. People are like, oh, I understand all that.
Well,
but I have to be.
Money doesn't always do it. I mean, in California this week, we had Steny Hoyer, who just spent 250 million of his own dollars, and that was after 250 million with an M of his own dollars to run for president and come in like ninth. So that's $500 million that the dude wasted out of his own pocket to lose. So she might, but you're right, in a state like this where everyone turnout's usually 23, 25%, maybe 50% for a president or a governor's race. We'll see. The money, it'll be the money because people out there in the hinterlands don't know, but they know her. So let's talk about her. How do you rate her tenure as U.S. Senator? She was the first to endorse Trump, and yet he, in return, said he won't endorse anyone for governor. Thank you very much. Bill Hagerty is the other. He did put forward a bill to make Census 2030 citizens only, unlike the 2020 disaster that allowed it, which was a mess. 0 Democrats voted for that when Schumer was the majority leader. But Thune hasn't put it back up like the SAVE Act for citizens only voting, much less citizens only in the census, which would go a long way to clean things up. What's your assessment, especially in Tennessee? What's your assessment of the 2 senators from Tennessee? Marsh has been there since 2019 and Hagerty since 2021, not very long, but he is up in 2027.
This is another one where I'll lean in and say, no one counts on me for federal commentary.
But they're from here. They affect here.
Yes, they are. But my little brain only has enough room to keep up with the state legislature. So other than like big, huge issues that kind of filter through social media, to be honest, I'm only vaguely aware of what goes on in Washington because I spend all my time and energy focused on the things that I have more control over or influence over.
Okay. And well, that's cool. I don't want to press you, but if she becomes governor, obviously everything changes.
I could probably spend 3 or 4 hours researching it and have a more informed opinion, and I would do so if I went to vote. But
you know more in your little finger than most people know in their entire bodies and brains for all this. But we'll see how
the state level politics I keep up with. But ever since I started the Tennessee Conservative, I pretty much put blinders on as it relates to federal issues, aside from, feeling the big issues of the electorate, like how they feel about Trump, how they feel about what's going on, generally speaking. Aside from the general climate, I don't really keep up with the federal stuff, to be honest.
Have you, and I'll put a pin or a spike in this one after this question. Do you feel that the MAGA movement, we're 12 years into it now, has affected Tennessee in any which way, or is it the same old Tennessee once he's gone?
I will say for people like you and me, having a Republican president in office probably hurts the progress, and it helps it in many ways in Tennessee. On the help side, I think the initiatives that we've seen come through, although most of them are shy of the mark of addressing the key issues on illegal immigration, such as taxpayer-funded illegal immigration in the schools, which is probably the number one issue that they failed to address this session again. It did. The MAGA movement has pushed down a lot of MAHA, a lot of MAGA as it relates to uh, gender ideology, as it relates to immigration, as it relates to having a more healthy Tennessee. I think a lot of that is filtered down in a positive way legislatively, as the legislature, for whatever reason, as if they're not an independent body, takes their lead from the president, which makes no sense to me. We could do all this stuff without ever having a Republican in office. So on that side, it's very positive. On the other side, when we have a Republican in office and we don't have a catastrophe at home, people tend to think that their government is serving them on the conservative side, which often just isn't the case. And so we're certainly hurting on engagement and involvement, but legislatively, I would say it's been positive.
Okay. A president is only as effective as his foot soldiers. That's why Nixon had to go. Ogles, Harshberger, Cohen, who won't be back, the only Democrat from here, Burchett. There's more. There's seven, I think. If the job of congressman is to bring money back to their state and their district, of course, to get reelected every 2 years, how do you feel the Tennessee delegation has done in your time watching them?
Again, this is something I've not kept up with that much. I mean, about the only thing I even know of, like as far as Chuck Fleischman, I'm sure he's done other things to bring money to our personal district, is like the big, huge Chickamauga lock project, which has been going on for, I don't know, a decade now, and it's not finished. And I think they fired the contractor that was working on it. So I'm not really sure what the status is of that puppy. But, we've got millions upon millions, maybe even $1 billion sitting there unfinished at the Chickamauga Dam. It takes them longer to repair things than it took them to build them initially in our highly regulated environment. So anytime the government gets into a large project, half the money's wasted before it ever starts, and you probably get a quarter of the productivity that you would get out of the private sector of meeting the same budget. So it's always a little bit of a throwaway by the time the money gets back to the district. But I'm not really sure how good the guys are at bringing home the bacon for Tennessee right now. Although I assume the longer they're there, probably the better they do it. But then the better they do it, the more favors they've handed out, and the
Yeah.
more they've bent and bowed. And so the more you bring back to your district, often the less you have the independence to vote with your constituency in DC. But that's how it's always been in every branch of government, or so it seems.
We'll have to call that the dam to nowhere.
Yes.
Van Epps replaced Green, who quit, who was chair of Homeland Security during the country's and Tennessee's greatest illegal immigration crisis since Davy Crockett left for the Alamo. Is there a congressman you're particularly proud of?
Well, I mean, the one that seems to be I guess I would say the two that seem to be the least shakable and the most aligned with Republican primary voters seems to be Burchett and Ogles, as far as I've seen. And, having Van Epps go in there was a kind of a blow to me, because he was Lee's lapdog during COVID. And it drove me crazy to watch that race and to not see any opponent attack him on his record in that regard. I mean, I would have tarred and feathered him all the way through the election on that, and I don't think people would have selected him. But nobody even said anything. I don't know if they thought that sometimes these guys get in a race where I think maybe think they can't win, and so they put the kid gloves on. And it's like, I'm a nice guy, he's a nice guy, she's a nice guy, we're all nice guys. But you can't, when you run a race, especially against somebody who's better funded, you have to bring those issues to mind. However, when you get Trump's endorsement, that's pretty tough to overcome. And so in that respect, I don't know if even that would have allowed them to pull it out, but it certainly would have helped.
Glenn Jacobs, the pro wrestler Kane, is mayor of Knox County. Ogles was mayor of Maury County before going to DC. Do you see any up and comers in our mayors we should keep an eye on?
All of them.
You like them all.
Anybody that has been a county mayor that's in a congressional district, especially if that county is a large portion of the district, is always somebody to keep an eye on for Congress, because it's just, it's easier. I mean, it's the reason you see so many people that run for office, move through the steps of government. Today's state rep is or county commissioner is tomorrow's congressman, and so you see that quite a bit. Or someone that gets their name out in the community through some other method, typically related to business. And so you see those two pathways. The former is obviously much more prevalent. So yeah, I would say, keep an eye on all of them, because especially any of them that are county mayors of the biggest counties, Knox, Hamilton, um, I would say Davidson, but you'd have to run as a Democrat. I don't know. I don't know the way that they've carved up Davidson. You may be able to be. I don't know if you could be a Republican, be David. Well, they've got metro government, don't they?
They do. They have a city council that is fighting over keeping the revenue from the airport between the city and the state. It's pretty funny, actually.
Yeah.
But
So I
yeah, it's
mean,
it's never had a Republican mayor in the history
yeah,
of
any of the
of
big
Nashville.
counties, the reasonably large counties, always gives you a leg up if you're going to run for Congress in that district.
That's true. And Burchett, some say the heir to Marcia for the Senate seat. If she moves into governor, someone they might appoint him as that. We'll see. He was mayor of Knox before Kane. So it seems like a launch pad to national politics. Al Gore, Lamar Alexander, rest in peace, Fred Thompson, Bill Frist. Do you look at those guys' track records, kind of the most renowned Tennesseans of modern memory, and see anything particularly strong for Tennessee, or just they were able to sell books and that dumb movie Inconvenient Truth, where none of the predictions came true? Some of the veterans of Tennessee politics that have made the national stage, anything stand out to you as like, yeah, that's Davy Crockett.
Well,
That's what
when I
makes
when
Tennessee.
I first moved here, if I'm not mistaken, I think we had a Democrat governor and a Democrat legislature back in 2002, and we at least had a legislature. And I know that that went on for a good while because I was part of the Majority Builders Club here in Hamilton County to try to get the majority in the House and the Senate, which we ultimately did. So I think that the tendrils of Democrat control, like people that are in politics tend to stay in politics a long time. And so I think as we transferred from Gore to the I guess the variety of different governors and others that we've had, you've kind of seen Democrat light almost exclusively in the governor's mansion. I do have I've not been impressed with any of the governors as far as being conservative. I believe if they did not have a more conservative House, um, we probably wouldn't see much movement on many things. We're lucky in that regard that the House tends to be more conservative than any other piece of the legislature or the government apparatus. So I don't know. I just
So
people,
let me just ask you a question on that. So the supermajority Senate, supermajority House, you would say this the House has been the driver of the bus, and the Senate, maybe just like in DC, has been more of the blocking and tackler for the big corporates. Like, would you literally say to somebody coming from out of state, like, yeah, our Senate is not as conservative as you may think, but our House is?
it's more conservative. The leadership isn't, but the rank and file certainly is. Now, Cameron, I mean, when you look at Cameron Sexton, Randy McNally, and Bill Lee, and you start grading levels of conservatism, it's a pretty tight grouping.
Yeah.
But if you had to rank them, it'd probably be, I don't know, where Lee and McNally might be side by side and maybe flip flopped on a couple of issues. And then Cameron's like an inch or two above in conservatism, not much, but a little better. I mean, at least he had the guts and the gumption to stand up to the governor to call the special sessions. I think he at least could smell, the political winds blowing in that time. And so for that, I'll always be grateful. Although, had he been a good leader, he would have stopped it at the beginning and said, "I'm sorry, you can't do this. This is not under your purview as governor. You're abusing your emergency powers," which is what should have happened. Imagine
Yeah.
if we'd just had one person during COVID in either of those branches that would have stood up. And, looking at just legacy, I have high hopes if Marsha Blackburn gets in there. I know the grassroots probably doesn't feel the same, But over the years, I've just been so beat down that I'm like, if we could get a governor in there that would push a few initiatives and just suck less than Bill Lee, I mean, that's the standard. Like you just got to be less crappy than Bill Lee. I believe she can do it. I really do. I mean, I don't
It'll
see.
depend on who the next lieutenant governor is and if Cameron stays as Speaker of the House, because he's got a tough wire act to do because we talked about it. 95 counties, most of which are farmers, having to deal with big business over there in the Senate. You pass a bunch of bills and it just sits there and dies because their interests are a little different. We do have an election. And sometimes, like former finance chair lady Patsy Hazelwood, who was an incumbent, they do get complacent and they get voted out. Are there any assemblymen or women you feel confident about that will be back in January?
Well, I'm sure the vast majority of them will be. Incumbency is something very difficult to overcome. It requires running a very tight, near perfect campaign. Obviously, certain members are far more vulnerable than others. Some are much stronger because of their positions. Primarily, they're stronger depending on how much special interest money they've taken, for how long they've taken it, and how long they've not had an opponent. The money is really like it is the mother's milk of politics. And so when people roll into a campaign with a large war chest, those are the most difficult ones to beat. I would love to see Kent Morrell win the Senate race against Briggs. I believe that's who he's running against. Because Briggs is terrible all the way around. And so I think that he is vulnerable. But without being on the inside of a campaign and really understanding the mechanics of it, when you're on the outside looking in, there's not enough to see to know, like, what's the candidate doing every day? What's their strategy? How are they going to deploy it? Are they doing contrast messaging or not? So most of these races that are going on in Tennessee, shy of being intimately involved with it, you really don't know how they're going to turn out.
How do you feel about the Justins? One from Memphis, the other from Oakland, California, by way of Nashville, and the Johnson from Colorado with a drawl. They keep going on national TV and calling us racist all the time. Do they have a point or just slanderous panders?
I don't think they have a point, but they do have a method. And when you're a state rep and you're in a red state and you really don't ever have any hope of having much in the way of power unless, they have their eye on the prize with that congressional seat, just so they can, rise to the top of the heap as far as Democrats go in the state of Tennessee. But I think they're playing it smart. They're pandering to their base. They're building their war chests for political ambition. And so all that makes complete and total sense. I don't agree, obviously, with their views, but it is nice to watch. I admire the Democrats for how unapologetically they defend and represent the views of their constituency. I don't see many Republicans do that. If you do that up in, it gets to the degree it can be, it gets rewarded on the Democrat side of the aisle. It gets punished from what I've seen on the Republican side of the aisle. Like if you speak out for your constituents and if it's against a pet issue of the governor or Sexton or McNally, like it's a good way to make sure that you're almost irrelevant in those chambers. And so I guess there is a certain amount of freedom that comes from knowing that you're not getting anything through the legislature anyway, because you're a Democrat. Whereas on the Republican side, if you go out and really speak out and stand up for your constituency without being uber guarded and watching everything you say and how you do it and giving and taking, you really can't do that in the legislature on the Republican side in Tennessee, but you can do it on the Democrat side.
Yeah, it's like the youngest kid of the Brady Bunch. You're not going to get the attention, but you're screaming for it. That's for darn sure. What would you do if you were Cameron Sexton, Speaker Sexton, to clean that up, twerking on desks, bullhorns, and getting mobs to show up and yell and scream from the gallery? What would you do?
Well, I mean, I think he's removed people from their committee appointments. How long he'll do that, I don't know. He's done that before in kind of fits of anger. He did it with Bruce Griffey on illegal immigration. He did it with, oh gosh, I've forgotten his
Jody
name.
Barrett on education.
Education. He's not in there anymore, but the guy that was from Maryville, that was real conservative and outspoken, was going to run for the Senate and then dropped out. Brian Ritchie. And so, we've seen it with him. We've seen it with Todd. I'll say, can't think of his last name off the top of my head, but we've seen it with a lot of Republican.
Oh, Chris
Warner.
Todd. Chris Todd. Oh, Todd Warner.
Warner.
Yeah, right.
And so we've seen that happen several times where,
Reagan.
if you
Reagan,
out,
they did it to Reagan.
Yeah, if you step out of line and if you're real conservative and outspoken like Cameron Sexton.
Oh, by the way, not Ronald Reagan, folks. There was a assemblyman named Reagan who lost
Yes.
because of this
Yeah.
high school
And so
shenanigans.
John Reagan. And so you see that. So I don't know. Obviously we don't need those shenanigans in the House, but at the root of it, like Cameron Sexton's like, this is my sandbox. And if you don't play by my rules, I will kick you out of the sandbox, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat.
It can have blowback. I mean, this is what I used to call Republican on Republican violence, which was, sort of the 11th commandment that Reagan said, "Thou shalt not speak ill of a fellow Republican." I mean, these are Republicans. Reagan, or whatever his first name was, Reagan was a conservative.
And they're more conservative than average.
Exactly. And so all of a sudden, people start saying, well, what difference does it make? I might as well vote for the Democrat. And they're right back in power, of which they were for 150 years prior to 11 years ago when the Republicans took over in a wave. And it took them a long time to get things back to where we are to this day. Okay, so we're running out of time, of course. I could do this with you for hours because you are an encyclopedia of Tennessee politics. A couple questions, and then I'll let you go. Whatever happened to Tennessee's anchorman, the only other conservative news besides you? I guess you're it now. You're the Tennessee's anchorman. What was that young man's name?
Give me a second and I'll think about it. He did what almost everybody in grassroots conservative media has done. He had to go make a living. And he had a thriving, it just sounds crazy, a karaoke business.
Oh,
Trivia, I think.
trivia nights.
Is what it was, trivia business. And so he has people all over the United States that go into bars and run trivia night. And so he just found that he needed to, focus on that. And he's a young man that has a family that was up and coming and getting married and all that stuff. So I can understand why he did it. He had a great talent. I wish he had stayed in it, but I can certainly understand the finances often make it impossible to do this unless you're gainfully employed otherwise, as you and I are.
Right. As I was trying to Google it while you were talking to see if I could find it. I couldn't. But the point is that he tried to do what you and I are doing, which is out of pocket, and was a different stage of his life, couldn't keep it going, but you are still fighting the good fight. So how hard is it?
Oh, it's ridiculous, which is, one reason I'm glad that you're hosting this event. For those of you who are watching at Kokomo's on July 23rd, it's a Thursday. We'll get started at 5 p.m. with a social hour and 6 p.m. with a program because we need grassroots funding. I mean, the only reason our publication and yours have been able to tell the truth is because of subscriber-based funding or our own personal seed money to get this stuff going. Because the moment you start taking money from corporate advertisers like Ford Motor Company, the Tennessee Titans, open up your paper, it'll be in there today. And all the big corporations that fund legacy media all throughout Tennessee that are almost exclusively staffed by Democrats, like you can't tell the truth. And then those same corporations fund the Republican Party apparatus, both at the state level, organizationally, and the candidates. And so the only way we can tell people about what's going on truthfully without losing all our revenue is to be subscriber funded. But as those funds dry up, your ability to pay your reporters and overhead and everything else disappears. And so that's why financing as a conservative, candidates and causes is so critically important. Everybody thinks somebody else will do it, but then you see things like the anchorman going away and other organizations that are struggling right now as apathy has risen. So this is something that conservatives really need to keep an eye on.
And the Tennessee Star had to branch out into other states because they just couldn't do it like you are focused on just the one state. What's your favorite song?
Oh, my favorite song. It goes all the way. I'm trying to think of some earworms that are in my head right now. There's a old gritty like 1960s rock song called Big Bird, which has kind of got a real good driving rhythm. I mean, I love all kinds of music. I don't watch TV. I listen to music. So my catalog is from Motown to old country, gospel, Norse and Celtic, vocal bands, almost every decade of music. So I'm all over the place when it comes to music, and I don't even know that I have a favorite genre. Although the one that I can play almost like a jukebox on a guitar is anything that's old and country. So that's really was my first love.
All right. Brandon, my friend, my media mentor, the guy who drove me out of Seattle to Tennessee. You didn't know that, but I did. I literally left early so I could meet you at your very first Patriot Summit
Yeah,
that
I
you
remember
had.
that.
Yeah, I got pictures of it. No beers. Tell our listeners where they can find out more about you and follow your social media.
TennesseeConservativeNews.com. You can hit the subscribe button. You can also text 423-205-5600 with the word news. That's 423-205-5600 to get on the newsletter list. And of course, we're on almost all your social media channels, so you can follow us there as well.
All right. Well, thanks again for coming on with us yet again. I hope to have you back soon. Hang on, folks. I will be right back.
Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee.
Thanks for coming back. That is it for this episode. Thank you, BL, for telling it like it is without the need to self-censor for the big interests. If not for you, there isn't anyone else except me to a smaller extent, but really you, dear listener, you are the grassroots he's doing it all for. So help him out if you can. Thanks for doing it. Don't have to be from Tennessee. This is goodbye for now. I'm your host, Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of HeartlandJournal.com. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to me as well as him and pass it around. We only grow with your help and still ad-free. Peace in our time and glory to God.
Tennessee Conservatives chief meteorologist here, Brandon Lewis, and our only meteorologist who's only here temporarily to tell you that we do have snow that is starting to accumulate here on Signal Mountain. Even got some roof dusting up here. So guys, y'all make sure to go get your toilet paper. Go get your toilet paper. Go get your bread. Go get your milk. Because it's going to get crazy. See ya.
Open up the sky, 'cause I'm coming up to you. So send down your wings and let them bring me to you. You know I'm standing at the station, ready to go. Oh, big old aeroplane, I'm trusting your soul. Get on up, big bird, to my baby love. Get on up, big bird, to my baby love. Get on up, big bird, 'cause I got to make it there. Just get on up, big bird, 'cause I got to make it there. Get on up.
It's a long way to Nashville from that Napa Valley vine. Put me on a road less traveled. Lord, now I know why. God knew I'd get there in His perfect time.
Heartland Journal Podcast is the media property of HeartlandJournal.com, where you can find news stories, commentary, and content serving the heartland of America. Any views or opinions represented on the podcast are personal and belong solely to the creator and do not represent those of the people, institutions, or organizations that the creator may or may not be associated with in professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated.
Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee. Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee.